Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16.
And I'm Strange Kirk.
Today we have an incredible guest. He is a man, a myth. He is a DJ. In fact, one could say he's an ultimate DJ. Turn to the bridge, Black Alert. That's right. We have UltimatDJz here with us today. UltimatDJz, man, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on.
No, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule because you run Talking Trek Live, STFC's official podcast, twice a week for oodles of time a day, and you spend a lot of time on this game. So we really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us today.
Oh, of course, man. It's always a lot of fun, and yeah, appreciate you guys putting this one on. I enjoy listening to you guys as well.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So let's just dive right into our standard set of questions. And how did you get into Star Trek?
Oh gosh, that one falls squarely on my mom. When I was growing up, when I was a very young kid, I guess I probably wasn't that young, but the Next Generation was on its first run. It was on the air when I was younger, and my mom was a huge fan. She was a huge fan of the original series. Like, some families have the Star Wars versus the Star Trek. Like my house was Star Trek, 100%. So, it would come on and my mom would sit down and watch it and I would sit down and watch it with her. And I don't know. I think that literally that developed my love of sci-fi from a very early age. I always loved sci-fi after that. I loved space. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. And it was all about Captain Jean-Luc Picard when I was younger. I had models, action figures. Still to this day, I have an Enterprise D model that I built and painted with my mom and my dad, and still to this day have that Enterprise D at my mom's house. She wouldn't let me bring it with me. Like when I moved out, she wouldn't let me have it. When I was going to college, she said that I would ruin it. so it's still there. It's at my mom's house on display. She's very proud of it. But yeah, we were a very Star Trek household, man.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So did you then get into DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise?
Ironically, I didn't get into any of those on their first run. When they were, on network television, I did not watch hardly any of those. Really, what I did at that time is I watched TNG, and I watched it over and over again. I went back and watched the original series because I wanted to know kind of how it began. When I watched TNG for the first time, I did not know who Captain Kirk was. I did not watch the original series. So after TNG, then I went back and learned about the original series. Then, of course, had to watch all the movies, right? And my mom, of course, loved it. She wanted to watch all the movies with me. So we spent several months and watched the movies together when we had a free night or had some time. So we watched all the movies but I didn't watch any of the later series on first run. It was only later that they either became available on, DVD box set that I went back. I actually bought Voyager on box set and watched through all of those because, that was before streaming. So I watched all of Voyager, loved Voyager. I thought it was a great story. I really, really liked that. And it wasn't until probably I might have been in my mid to late 20s when I kind of decided that I wanted to go and watch every property there ever was. And that is when I started from the very beginning, watched all the original series, watched the movies. I literally watched them in production order, start to finish. And that's when I decided to go ahead and give Deep Space Nine a run and rewatch Voyager. And then for the very first time, literally ever, watching Captain Archer in Enterprise, because I had never really gotten behind that show. The biggest surprise to me out of all of those was Deep Space Nine. I did not think that I would like that property, and I loved that property. The writing was brilliant on that show. So that was one that I was not looking forward to watching, but very, very much enjoyed. It probably had some of the most intellectual writing of any of the Star Trek series. So really, really enjoyed Deep Space Nine when I watched it through.
What about Deep Space Nine was the most appealing to you? I know it had a very intricate storyline past season three with the moral.
Yeah, it was. I think just because it was so intertwined, like the entire, like, okay, so every story or every property kind of had the underlying arc. Like, really, and Next Gen didn't. Next Gen did not have that arc that kind of spanned season to season. But Deep Space Nine did. You had, the Cardassians and their constant oppression, and then you had the prophets and their constant kind of, only 2 or 3 times per season, but them kind of intervening and presenting themselves. And not only that, but I'm a huge fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And what I love most about Marvel, I've always said this, their writers are just, there's no amount of money on earth that you could pay the Marvel writing team and it'd be worth it, because they took how many films and literally tied them all together without mistakes, without storyline mistakes. The story was solid. And that's what I felt about Deep Space Nine, is that literally from episode 1 until it went off the air, they maintained a consistent story. And I'm such a huge nerd for that kind of writing. I'm a huge nerd for that kind of intricacy and that attention to detail. And I think that's why I like DS9. It was not as action packed as, say, Voyager or Next Gen. It was not as thriller, if you will. It was stimulating. It was intellectual, and I liked that story.
You mean like cerebral?
Yeah. Like like every single episode you watched, you thought about it afterwards, and you were like, well, what about this? Or how does this present itself? Or, and a lot of times those stories would present themselves in such a way that you were asking about the unknown. You were asking about the prophets. You were asking about his communication. Why was he the chosen one? And then they just had some really cool episodes, like when Captain Sisko was the writer, and all of the characters portrayed different, or all the actors rather, portrayed different characters back in time, like as a scene setter for a novel. I thought that is probably one of my all-time favorite episodes, to be able to see the actors portray different characters, but yet at the same time knowing the characters that they kind of represented in the show. And then watching, the author, Captain Sisko, kind of travel through time and write his story. Like, that's probably one of my favorite DS9 episodes of all time.
Did you know that the alternate ending that Ira Steven Behr had for DS9 was that everything was a product of Benny Russell?
I had heard that fan theory. I never knew if that was actually true or not. I've done some reading on it. I've heard that theory, which would have been totally okay with me. Like, I don't know that I would have appreciated that, at the time, because I'm typically not a fan of lazy endings. But that episode was done so well that I really feel like they could have pulled it off. Now if it was done poorly, then I wouldn't have been a real big fan of that. An example of an ending I'm not happy with, and spoiler alerts for somebody, I'm sure. Sorry. I liked the entire first run of Picard. I watched that every single week. First run episode, I watched it every episode. And for the most part, really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the reintroduction of the characters and the cast and where they had been all this time. Man, I did not like that season finale. Did not like it. I felt like it was lazy. I felt like it was the obvious go-to. I didn't dig it. I didn't.
It was
like
definitely not what anybody was expecting, and
maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe that's what they were going for, is that it wasn't what anybody was expecting. It's because nobody was expecting it to be that bad. Like that's kind of how I feel. I mean, and it wasn't even, listen, the first 40 minutes of it was great. It was literally the last 5 minutes of that episode, and I was like, oh my God, you got to be flipping kidding me. Like,
the whole Picard show, the whole premise of the show, it being, I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, they're synthetic beings. And then it turns out it's like, yeah, ancient mythological synthetic beings are going to destroy the galaxy. And I was kind of like, what? Did a 5-year-old write this plot?
I could have even gotten behind that. I could have even gotten behind that part of the plot But then, okay, so, and again, sorry for anybody who hasn't seen it, but at the end, they open the portal, right? And what the hell did we see come out of there? We saw like freaking octopus tentacles flying out of the sky. Like, and I'm like, really? Like, that's the CGI, that's the graphic, like that is this super ancient technologically super advanced synthetic race, and they're just flying around with spiky tentacles. Like, God, come on, really? Like like I said, the last 5 minutes of that episode just really.
I think they kind of borrowed it from Discovery in season 2, where you have Control gaining all that knowledge from the sphere, and it turns into all these like octopi, and they're all destroying all the organic life forms. I think that's kind of what they were going for, trying to tie in the J.J. Abrams, Alex Kurtzman verse, if you will.
Let's just not talk about Discovery.
Look, bro, what he's saying is it wasn't level 50, bro.
It was not level 50, Sky. You're right. It was like so level 28, right?
Ouch.
I'm kidding.
Ouch. Ouch. I feel so slighted on my own show. God.
I apologize. That was inappropriate.
No, it's cool. I don't.
Yeah, cut that. Edit. Cut that. Okay, just kidding. All right,
we're leaving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're leaving it in.
Yeah, I'm secretly a jerk. Sorry, guys. Apologies.
So do you like the new Trek? New Trek meaning anything 2009 beyond?
I did. I enjoyed those. I don't think that I loved them as much as I loved the concept of what they could have been. Like, I loved the fact that they rebooted it. Truthfully, I liked the writing. I liked how they created the Kelvin timeline. I was never opposed to that. I love the action. I am an Abrams fan, so I like the action. I actually thought that the movies were decent. Okay, what was so disappointing to me was that they never progressed. They never got any farther than they did, and so much time has passed that the franchise is dead. So that was disappointing to me. I did enjoy the movies, and ironically, I'll here's a nice little bit of circle closure. My mom and I sat down and watched those together when they came out. When they were released to video, that was kind of always our thing. No one else in my family was really as much into it. So, when they came out, like, I invited mom over and, we'd make a dinner or whatever, pop some popcorn or whatever, and we watched them together. I think her favorite, and I would probably agree, and I know a lot of people don't, but our favorite was the one with Benedict Cumberbatch. What was that? Into Darkness. That was our favorite.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, that was our favorite, and I believe that it was our favorite because it was a new interpretation of a classic story. Like, Nero was a new story, like completely new. That didn't happen. It didn't present itself. Like, there was nowhere in the original series where that had happened. But Khan, Khan is a classic evil character. Khan was in the original series with the same degree of finesse and the same degree of intellectualism and the same degree of evil genius.
Oh, Benedict Cumberbatch definitely did his homework. That's all I'm going to say.
He did. A lot of people did not like him as Khan. I don't think that there literally could have been anybody better. He was so good.
What's really funny about that whole situation is that if a lot of people don't realize, there are actually comic books out there, and I've read them, and they're comic books that were made kind of as like the prequel to the movies. And so you have the countdown to Star Trek. Mm-hmm. You have countdown to Darkness. Then you even have dedicated comics for Khan, for Nero, that gives you the backstory. It explains why Khan is a white guy when he's supposed to be from India. And so I would encourage a lot of people to read those if you actually want to learn the backstory. But a fun story you were talking about my mother, she was a big Star Trek fan. I grew up, my grandfather watched it. My mother watched it when they were brand new on TV. She watched them as they were coming out. And so one day she said something about wanting to come by, and I was home alone at the time, and I said, hey, you want to check out this new Star Trek movie? And so I put it in, and we got through the movie, and then, Leonard Nimoy comes in, and of course she's, oh my God, this is awesome. This is the greatest thing. But the biggest impact that, the biggest takeaway that I have from watching that with her was when it got to the end, and Leonard Nimoy did the whole dialogue, space, the final frontier. Boy, I've never seen my mom cry like that, like over anything. And it was just it was really cool for her to be able to experience that with her and to watch that with her, because she grew up watching Leonard Nimoy and the progression in the movies and seeing him and the character as Spock. And then she sees him come back, so she thinks it's cool. But to have Leonard Nimoy do the classic, intro, outro, whatever you want to call it, man, that was just a big impact. So,
this was one thing that I never felt like Abrams got enough credit for. I felt like, just like I like cerebral writing, just like I love the MCU, I feel like the Abrams writers didn't get enough credit for explaining a story that they literally had to reboot / create, because canon was not going to allow these guys to
take creative liberties,
change the story. Yeah, literally, Star Trek fans, come on, we know them. We are Star Trek fans. We see it in this game. Star Trek fans are some of the most hardcore fans in the world. They were not going to let Abrams screw with the story. So the fact that they rewrote a story that worked and preserved the reboot of the characters, preserved the style of literally everyone was cast perfectly.
It was the perfect. There's no way. I don't think there's, and I've thought about this. We've talked about it on other shows. I've talked about it with other friends, Star Trek fans, and so forth. I don't think that you could have chosen any other actor to replace any of the actors that they found. I really don't think so. I think everybody played their part perfectly. I think that everybody did their research, but at the same time, I think every one of those actors did a fantastic job of tailoring the role to their acting style. Because I say this because here's the thing: we love to see Star Trek stuff. We're gonna watch it, except for I've watched every single one of them except Lower Decks. That is trash. I cannot bring myself to watch it.
I haven't started that one yet either. To be honest with you, I haven't started.
I disagree that it's trash. That's my opinion.
Of course, it's just my opinion. Just like I don't really like Discovery, but the point I make is when people go, "Oh, well, they changed this or they changed that." Well, here's the thing, man. You also have to understand that they're caught between a rock and a hard place. The rock is Star Trek fans, and we're gonna hold your nose to the grindstone here. We're gonna hold your feet to the fire because we want good content. But their hard place is we also have a huge budget, and we need to attract new fans, because just Star Trek fans alone are not going to get us the money that we really need to make from this. So we have to make it appealing to a broader audience. And I think that they did a great job of balancing those two, where we got something that was true to the franchise name. But I could see whereas some young kid, 15, 16 years old, whatever, that decides to watch it, would be kind of open the gateway into them getting into the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, the cast was great. The stories were good. By today's standards, you need a lot of action. You need a lot of sci-fi. And that was what, a lot of people gave them grief for. Well, the Enterprise is too advanced. It wasn't that advanced. Well, times have changed. Cinema has changed. And so you have to tech it up, for today's audience to get into it if you're going to introduce somebody to Trek today.
But for me, at least they didn't do what Discovery did, where we have instant warp and holographic projections and everything like that. But this takes place 10 years before the original series.
Even the writing of Discovery doesn't upset me, because the way that they closed out season 2 kind of explained why we never heard of it again. Why it was never mentioned in any other property, even though it happened in the early part of the timeline. And again, spoilers, I won't tell you exactly what they did, but the writing there was cleanup, but it was actually done decently. Sloppy cleanup is not good. We don't like sloppy cleanup. But, if if it makes sense, if it is plausible, then I like a good wrap up. And to your point that you were mentioning earlier about Nimoy being on Into Darkness, that or not just Into Darkness, but on the original one as well. That whole sequence just kind of reintroduce, like for example, okay, go to Into Darkness, okay, where we had the reintroduction of Khan. When I watched that with my mom, now of course she loved seeing Nimoy, like that touched her heart. I don't remember if she cried, but I'm kind of thinking that she probably had some tears in her eyes because it connected generations. But even more so than that, she enjoyed Into Darkness. She enjoyed Benedict's performance, and she appreciated how close the story in some parts came to the original, yet was different because it was a different timeline. It was like an example of the butterfly effect. The fact that it was now Kirk in the radiation chamber, that it was now Spock who yelled out in pain and emotion, and it just, like, those kinds of similarities to me, I think are expertly done. Like, I loved the scene, in Wrath of Khan in the original series. I loved that scene between Kirk and Spock. And now to see new life in that scene, but different because, gosh, it is a different galaxy. This is an example of the butterfly effect, and timeline ripples and all this stuff, how kind of the same thing could happen again, but the roles, but just the details were different. Now it was Kirk who was dead, and now it was Spock who screamed out, Khan's name. Like,
one of the greatest things that I liked about that was the following fight scene. And then somebody said something to me. I was watching it with a friend of mine, and he's a Star Trek fan. He's kind of into it, but he's more casual. He hasn't seen everything, and it's not a big part of his life like it is for us. And he said something about, well, I thought Khan was this superhuman, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, you also have to remember that Vulcans have about 3 times the strength of a human being. So that's more of an even fight. So
yeah.
that right there, if you think about what's going on and how Vulcans are stronger.
You had 2 superhumans going at it, so.
Exactly. So that makes sense that he was able to, with a little bit of help, subdue Khan. And so it really did. It tied it up really great, and I'm sure we could go on for hours about how great they are.
We could. We could.
I know Tech's ready for us to move on.
I'll wrap up with this, and to answer your original question, yeah, I was a fan of the Abrams reboot. I'm sad to see that and very recently, right? Like in just the last couple of weeks, they finally kind of put the kibosh on Star Trek 4. So I am disappointed in that. I'm sad to see that. I did like the reboot. Was it, my favorite property ever? Maybe not, but it was still Star Trek, and it was still true to the story. In as much as they could be. The cast was phenomenal. Like you said, every player played their part. It was a good series of movies, and if they did another, I would gladly shovel cash to go watch it.
I've been working on that, bro. It's actually going to be
called... Ska, make that happen, okay?
It's going to be called Revenge of Scarporin. So it's coming out.
There you go.
It's Star Trek 50 written Star Trek 50. Yeah, Star Trek 50.
Level 50.
So who is your favorite character then, DJs? Picard?
What, through the entire... Oh, yeah, Picard.
Yeah.
Picard is definitely my favorite captain. My favorite character... my favorite character is Commander Data. Even, as a young kid, when I was watching him on TV, like, I was fascinated with him as an android, as a robot, because I just liked that kind of sci-fi thing. I liked.
He's not a robot. He's an android.
An android. I know. I had that distinction offered to me several times as a young person. But yeah, no, I believe that he was my favorite character. But yeah, Picard was definitely my favorite captain.
All right, so I'm gonna leave this about cerebral writing, and I'm plugging this every episode now for whatever reason. If you're very interested in cerebral writing, Babylon 5, which was kind of the basis for Deep Space Nine back in the 90s. the showrunner wrote 92 of 110 episodes. So the amount of continuity you get and the storylines that connect and interweave is was way ahead of its time in terms of how it was presented. But that's for another time, another topic. Let's switch gears to Star Trek Fleet Command, the game that we all play. How did you get into Star Trek Fleet Command?
Yeah, I mean, purely by chance, man. I was crazy enough. I keep talking about my mom. I was visiting with my parents for Thanksgiving in 2018. And I mean, crazy. You know, it's weird how you remember like stupid things. Like, you know, we all remember what we were doing on, like, say, September 11th. You know, like we all remember what we were doing if you experienced Pearl Harbor. Like, you know, these are things that will live with you forever. And not to draw like a lame comparison, but like I remember exactly what I was doing when I downloaded this game for the first time. That's how traumatic this experience has been for me. So, but yeah, no, I was visiting my parents for Thanksgiving, and I
Define
was,
traumatic.
you know, a traumatic in this case being something that we love to hate, but that we hate to love. This game is beautiful, really. Like this game is beautiful. The game is intricate and it's sexy. It's designed aesthetically very, very well. Um, when I first downloaded the game, I just downloaded it because an ad popped up on my phone. And I said, oh, it's Star Trek, so I'm going to check it out. Keep in mind, I had downloaded Timelines. I had downloaded Star Trek Online and didn't enjoy them early on. So I would get rid of them. I downloaded this game and was immediately impressed with how it looked. And very early on, I was able to grab a team. And that is, honest to God, that's probably what kept me in the game. Because I joined an alliance, an active alliance, as like a level 10, which how many times does that happen today? Like, you fall in, like, if you join in the game today, or if you've created an alt account and you start over, like, that first alliance you join, what are the odds that anything happens in that alliance? Like, 0 to none.
0.
Nothing. Buddy, I kid you not. The alliance that I randomly joined when joining the game turned out to be a great group of people that were active and that I chatted with. And we didn't stay together long because there was only like maybe 10 of us, you know? So we didn't stay like in that group. We eventually, like probably within a month or two, we joined another alliance, and some people went and some people decided to go their own way. But that kept me in the game, is the fact that in that, you know, early alliance, that level 5 alliance that we were in, had some other active players. That's because the game was brand new. And unfortunately, I think players today miss that opportunity.
Is so the alliance that you joined, that one get absorbed into JMD? Is that how you say it, JMD?
No, I am in Jammed now, but that, you know, came much, much later. So when I first joined the game, I honestly don't even remember my very first tag, whatever we had when we joined the game. But it was very soon after that me and probably 6 or 7 of those players joined an alliance called UKA. They were the Unknown Assassins. And UKA was my home for literally 18 months. I just played with them. I was eventually approached to become what, you know, their command structure. They had lieutenants, so I was tapped as a lieutenant, and, you know, a part of the leadership team. And eventually then promoted to Admiral of the Alliance, where I remained there for over a year. And I didn't leave UKA for the longest time because, first of all, what a great group of people. That alliance is still active. Still a great group of people. As a matter of fact, just a couple of months ago, I was doing kind of an Armadas tour on my server, and I left Jammed for, I mean, not like permanently, like I just left to go join 2 or 3 alliances, teach them, do some Armada stuff. And I went back to UKA for 3 days. And man, it's just like, I don't know if you guys have ever gone back to a previous alliance, or if your alliances are even still there. What a cool feeling it was to kind of go back home, because a lot of the same people still there. Like UKA was a really cool, tight knit family, a really cool group of people, and it broke my heart to leave. But we were at a point where we weren't going to get any stronger. We weren't going to get any more powerful. And so for me to progress as a player, like I had to join a larger team, because we had literally kind of capped out. Like we had some great players. We had large players. We had 35 and 36 and 38 level players. We just, the alliance rewards, the team rewards, we were consistently 7th, the 8th, the 9th place, and we just couldn't crack that top 3. So a handful of us decided to try for the top 1 or 2 alliances, just because it was that time for us. It was time for us to do epic armadas. It was time for us to do level 38 and level 39 armadas. It was time for us to get mining rewards that were number 1 or number 2. That kind of stuff we would never get in our alliance. So
I did that recently. I went to I saw an alliance. They were always trying to recruit people, but they just like pretty low level. There was like 10 or 11 of them. And I decided that I was just going to just kind of break up the monotony and everything. I went and joined them, and I showed him how to raid, and I kind of was like the muscle for him, and then I was able to get another guy that was kind of powerful. He kind of jumped in, and he helped me out. We kind of got him situated, and then I said, all right, guys, I got to go back to my big alliance, because it once you get up into the 30s, you really need the rewards. You kind of have to have those. And so I still help them out from time to time. Every now and then, be like, hey, we're getting bullied. Can you come help? And I'll come in and help blow up whatever and help them raid, and then I go back. But it's nice to do that, because it renews your interest in the game, and it gives you a different objective instead of just time to click the hostiles and click the refine and click this. It gives you something
1,000%. Yeah, man. Like out of the last 3 months of playing this game, there's been some high points. Going back home and joining some of these other alliances. I joined Beer. Their alliance tag was Beer. They were a really cool group of people. Enjoyed playing with them. I think I visited 5 or 6 alliances, but it was very cool. GIS was another one. Really nice guys. Like it broke up the monotony. It allowed you to do something a little bit different and to go in and teach. Because we take for granted too, being in the number 1 or number 2 alliance, you can take for granted some of the stuff that we just know, and how are other people going to know if no one has ever told them? And why would anybody tell them? Because they're not on their same team. It's just like, little things like that you would expect people to know in the game, and they didn't. And the fact that you were able to share something with them to make their gameplay better, and make them stronger and make them more competitive, is just a really cool feeling, and then, like you say, to be the muscle, to go crack some bases and let them feed a little bit, when I went back to UKA, and I'll tell the story really quick. When I went back to UKA, I ran a bunch of armadas, and was told by their admiral at the time, like, gosh, this is the first rare we've run in over a month. And it gives you some perspective as to, for example, how slow progression can be in this game if you're free to play. And that's kind of why I've kind of renewed championing that cause. Like my main focus is always on, listen, it's okay to spend and it's okay to monetize. I'm okay with Scopely monetizing just about anything. At the end of the day, it's a business and I'm a capitalist. So, I mean, that's how I make my living too. So I get it. But this product is a video game that is advertised as free to all players, and there must be a grindable free path that does not involve 5 years for somebody to get to level 25. So, for Baymax to come to me and say, gosh, we haven't run a rare in a month. That tells me we need to look at that system. Why hasn't he run a rare in a month? They're getting their uncommons every single day in the daily chest. They are running the uncommons, but is the rate at which they're acquiring rare directives so slow that it could possibly be a month in between them being able to run one? How in the hell are they ever going to run an epic?
Oh, those guys, when I joined that other small crew, one of the guys said, "Hey, I can finally run a rare. You guys ready for this one?" And he posted up these coordinates, and I said, "I can solo that one." I was like, "Pick a bigger one." And he was like, "Well," he was like, "Really? How big?" And I was like, "Well," and then I PM'd the other guy that was on there that had a little bit decent power. He's got like a 1.7, 1.8 mil ship. I said, "Hey, man, can you run a rare?" He goes, "Yeah, what are you thinking?" And so we sat there and did a few calculations. I said, "Hey, man, run this 12 million over here." I said, "With us two, we can definitely get it." And they were like, "Well, what ships should we send?" I was like, "I don't care. Send a Botany Bay." I was like, and they just thought it was they thought it was the coolest thing in the world. They're like, "Dude, this is enough rare tokens for me to open up chests for like a week."
Yes. Yes. Like, but that is a cool ass feeling, man. Like when the players are like, "Oh my God, I just opened 6 chests." Like, "Oh my, I just got more crystal than I've seen in the last month." It's just mind blowing the gap that has been built into this game from like the top 2 or 3 alliances to the rest of your server. And
actually, in my case, I'm a level 28 in a top 5 alliance, and we have about 4 or 5 level 40s, and they're constantly running epics and or rares that are in the like 20, 30 million, and I have a 1 million ship. And so if I go, I'm going to get knocked out. So like I don't even go to any armadas run pretty much in my alliance because I'm not going to get in.
see, that's almost disappointing to hear, because Armadas has the capability of really making people mad. Like when they first came out, our alliances were fighting. Alliances were breaking up over Armadas and people getting bumped. I mean, players would quit and go to other teams because of that mechanic. The star mechanic now is wonderful, and really truthfully, like, that's a little disappointing to hear, man, because like your alliance could solve that by just doing a really simple call-in system.
But the problem with that is we ran into that problem, and I've run into it. When I was a Commodore of the number 2 alliance in our server, one of the biggest problems we had was the armadas, and we did the call-in system, and it's like if a dude runs a 37 mil armada and some guy with a 500k ship calls in, and you guarantee him a slot, and then you get a couple other people like that, I mean, you're going to lose, right? And if it's an epic,
sure,
that's $50. That's $50.
Oh, sure. And you pick your targets. If for example, if we're looking at a 39 epic, okay, then we pre-call that, but it's still almost like a call-in. Like, we'll do a power check. Hey, who's on and what power do you have? And if we can then look at who responds, and it's a simple response. We don't write 3 sentences. We just write 3.3, 2.7, 3.1. Once, then we take a look at kind of a combination of the first 5 players that give us the necessary power. It's not super complicated, but it still keeps it kind of fair. And we'll take the first 5 players that give us the necessary power to go do something like that. And so, when you're looking at a target that definitely requires power, then you got to arrange it a little bit. We call that pre-calling. We'll pre-call that and determine our team going in. And then if somebody shows up, they get starred out. But if it's, for example, if I'm going to run a 35 uncommon, okay, me and one other player can kill that. So I don't care who comes along. If I'm looking at a 35 rare, I don't care who comes along. So, in that particular case, the pre-call system can work, but you also want to look at, like you were saying, calculating the power that's needed and finding, the most profitable spot, the most profitable position for you to be in so that you can maximize the benefit from your directives.
I think it also has to do with who's running the armadas. Because if you're in the level 35 to 40 something range, you don't want to toil around with an uncommon, 35. Usually you don't, right? Usually these guys go for the epics and the rares that are in I don't actually know the conversion rate, but like the ones that are like 23 to 35 million, right? So somebody like me who's at a level 28 with a 1 million ship or 1.2 million ship or whatever I got, it's like, all right, there's no point because all these people are running these armadas that are so high and you need the power to win. Otherwise, you're going to get like one or two of me, and either you're barely going to win or you're going to lose. And there goes your money that you spent.
I guess, yeah. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but I think that as your alliance progresses, like for example, there has to be a mentality of your bigs to support the smalls. Like that has to be a thing, and maybe I'm just really blessed to be a part of a team that believes that way. But if your bigs don't support the smalls, then there's no future to your alliance. There is no growth because the 40s, they're not. Listen, let's face it, they ain't growing a heck of a lot more without dropping some serious coin. The future of that alliance, man, is with you, the 28 who can be 30 in a month if you're treated right. The 32 who is a couple of weeks away from being able to build their epic ship. That is the future of an alliance. That is the growth that you can get. That is the massive power and the extra players, the extra hands on deck. My alliance believes that. And so we kind of, unless it's a 39 epic, all right, unless it's a 39 epic, we kind of guarantee slots for the lower players, knowing that they need it more than we do.
All right. On that point, let's switch over to a little bit because I want to get into this. You run a very successful podcast, and I'll call you the voice of Star Trek Fleet Command, since you probably put out more volume in terms of content than pretty much anybody else who does content creation for Star Trek Fleet Command. And I want to know, how did you fall into that?
It definitely wasn't supposed to be as much as what's happening now. To be honest with you, I was a fan and a consumer of content from Rev Deuce and No One Shell. And I watched their YouTube stuff. I participated in their Discords, and I learned a lot. One day, I guess this is probably back in, actually probably close to a year ago now, maybe August or September of 19, I approached both of them with an idea and said, hey, listen, I don't want to compete. I'm not trying to do the same thing you guys are doing, but I am a radio guy. I'm a career radio guy. So I've been doing radio for the last 21 years, maybe. And my background is in morning radio. So it's a lot of talk. It's humor. It's energy. Like, that's what I've always loved. That's what I've done. So I approached them and said, hey, listen, I'd kind of like to develop something a little bit different. Your content is video. It's short burst. It's, here, but I'd kind of like to do a podcast. And honestly, personally, even I had been looking for a podcast to do for like the last 2 or 3 years. I wanted to do one and never really found the right product or the right niche because there's literally tens of thousands of podcasts out there. So I wanted to do something that I knew I was going to have an audience for. And so I said, this is it. This is perfect. So I talked to them a little bit. They gave me some ideas, some pointers on stuff that we could do. We made a couple of test shows. And then I reached out to Panic. And I said, Panic, hi, here's me. Here's what I do and what I would like to do for you guys. And here's some of the work that we've already done. And nothing. Nothing. Complete silence for about 2 or 3 days. Nothing. And 3 days later, Panic sends me a message back and says, listen to all 3 episodes. Wow. Really good stuff. Man, I puffed my chest out. I felt really, really good. He said, this is really, really good stuff. He said, I'd like to hear more. So we made a few more, and that's when we actually started, I think, in November. We actually started publicly, taping and publicly releasing. starting in November of 19, and sent him over a couple. And it was very, very early on that Panic got behind us. Because, again, on a YouTube platform, it's a little bit different. Like radio kind of has its expectation. I mean, people still today turn on the radio and they hear wacky, corny games that they want to play, or win money, or win prizes, or win lunch, or win movie tickets, and that's kind of what radio is. And to stay true to that, I approached Panic and Scopely and said, "Hey, listen, I'll do this, but I'd like to be able to make it as authentic as possible. I want you guys to supply, prizes." And of course, they started small. I'm pretty sure on my very first show, dude, I gave away like 5 million trite. Like, that's what we gave away on the very first show. Was like 5 million.
That's not bad.
5 million. Yeah, I mean, it was small, okay, but it was something. It's what we gave away on our very, very first show. But after that and moving forward, we have literally, today we taped episode 84, and we have given something away every single show. And that kind of just developed with Scopely. And then the metrics started growing, and then Rev and No One and Fortis, they were all very supportive. They helped plug it and they helped promote it. And because it was different, it wasn't, I was never, ever competing with any of those guys. It was something completely different. And so they all supported it. And it just, it's taken off. I mean, it's massive, to the point where, you can see on our website now, we're knocking on the door of 40,000 downloads. We average about 50,000 hours a month of listened to content. It's huge. I mean, we're really blessed. And I say we, because it's not just me. I've got a whole team. Snake Eyes is the executive producer. He is the boss. He's the man. He does the business. He does the clocks. He does he does all the hard stuff, and he is a huge part of that process, and I'd be lost without him. So, and then we have a great moderator team. We've got a great tech team. Like, just, there's a lot of people that work on this show, and they literally all volunteer. Like, there's no money to be made doing this. It's just because we love the game, and we love the product, and we love to teach. So,
how did it evolve from what you wanted to start with to what it is now? Because I know, listening to some of your latest podcasts, it's very current events based. It's very mathematical based. You go through various progressions of testing crews and armadas and mining rates and whatnot. And what was your initial goal, or how did you want the podcast to go, and then how did it turn into what it is now?
To be honest with you, we have stayed very true to form. That's kind of the way that I always wanted it to be. Even when I was Admiral of UKA, I was a teacher. I loved explaining the mechanics. You could argue that's for several different reasons. Maybe I wanted to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't know. I studied the game. I studied the math because details are important to me. Like, I want to know why something works. I want to know how to be better. I want to know how to make it better, and what combinations can make that so. So even when I was Admiral of UKA, I loved to teach. I loved to examine. We would always, we had a room on our Discord where we would, every single event that came out, we'd analyze all the levels, what you had to hit, the number of points, this and that, and said, okay, here is the most efficient way to do this event. And that's kind of where it started. I wanted to break it down in a detailed and analytical way. And truthfully, I mean, we do on the podcast, we do offer a lot of commentary. We do offer information. We have now kind of become an avenue for Panic to come on the show and get in front of the community, which is good. But at its core, we still love to teach. We still love to do the math. We love to break it down and figure out how it works, why it works, and why somebody would want to invest in it, not just be told to invest in it.
And so, how long do you think you're going to continue to do this? Because 84 or 86? 86?
We taped number 84 today. We taped
84. Okay, so you've done 84 episodes. And I think for us, this is like episode 16. And you tape like 2 to 3 hours at a time, twice a week. So
Yeah.
how much stamina does that take, and
A
how
lot.
and how are you gonna continue forward? Like, how long do you think you're gonna be doing at this rapid pace, if you will?
You know, right now we are really so. That's kind of a two-part question. So the podcast will always be. The podcast will always be. We used to shoot for an hour and a half because an hour wasn't long enough. Like even from episode 2, episode 3, like we never made it under an hour. So then we started shooting for 90 minutes and we started passing that. So now we shoot for 2 hours and we kind of consistently pass that. So, but there does come a point where it's just too much, right? There comes a point where it's even, difficult to listen to. Like, when are you going to have time to listen to 4 hours or 4.5 or 5 hours of content in a week? So we have really, really tried to cut it to about 2 hours, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. But as far as the stamina for the show, like, we love what we do. And so that provides enough for us to want to do it. Now, is it once in a while, do we want to take a day off? Sure. And we have. We have come out and said, hey, listen, we just literally can't do a show today. There's not enough going on, or there's nothing to talk about, or, my kids have this, or I'm traveling, or, whatever. So we've done that a time or two, but
Scopely's running another Discovery event, and it's timed, and I don't got time to talk to you people when I gotta.
Believe it or not, believe it or not, I have not canceled a show because of anything that's happened in game. Like anytime I've canceled a show, it's either been my work life or my personal life or anything like that. I have never canceled because of anything that Scopely has done. I've come close once or twice, to just being so frazzled and so frustrated that like I don't want to be on the air because I don't want to say something that I'll regret, or I don't want to be negative, because I am generally a very positive guy. My people know that about me. And the people who don't know it about me or don't know me, typically just, call me a shill or say I'm in Scopely's pocket or whatever. That's kind of just how I am. I'm just a happy guy, and I do look for the positives because I am analyzing everything. So I always look for efficiency. And that's just kind of how I present myself. So when for example, it was the very first weekend of the Paracebellum event. So just like a couple of weeks ago, like literally just a few weeks ago was the first time I had ever thought about canceling a show because of Scopely. It was the same weekend as Gauntlet, I'm pretty sure, the Gauntlet week 4 or the Gauntlet finale. And I literally almost canceled the show that day because I literally had nothing positive to say. Nothing positive to say about the game that day. And I almost canceled the show. Now, I didn't. We ended up taking a totally different path that day. But I've never canceled a show because of something that's happened in the game.
Okay, that's noble, at least, because I'm not.
Or stupid. Or stupid.
Well,
But, to answer your question, as far as the show will go on. The show will go as long as I have the support to make it. As long as Scopely is playing along, as long as the community is playing along, as long as the people who work with me are playing along, as long as there's a community to talk to, I like doing what we do, and I'm sure that some of the actors will change throughout, our next 84 episodes, but I don't have any plans to let up. I don't have any plans to let up. I have every intention on continuing to go, because here's the thing, the game is evolving. So there's always something to teach on, because there's always something happening or something changing or something new. So, as long as that continues to happen, then I will continue being able to figure it out and then teach other people.
We got a question real quick here from somebody on our server for UltimatDJz. I know you mentioned, you don't want to be negative, and there's a few other questions I want to ask you as kind of as it pertains to this. Kind of ask some of the hard questions. That's kind of why I'm here. But the one question we have from Maza from our server 34, is he's curious if there was one thing that you could change in the game, I guess maybe your biggest pet peeve or whatever, what would that be? What would you like them to change?
Cost, hands down, simple. Price. We were talking about this just today. There is absolutely, in my mind, no reason for a level or 2 levels or 3 levels or a single component for a ship to cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. If there was one thing that I could change in this game, it would straight up simply be the cost to play the daggone game. There's no reason that it should cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to play a mobile game.
Well,
none in my mind.
Do you think that and again, you know, if you look at, we can compare it here, and I can say this because obviously we're not affiliated in any way with Scopely, but it is true that if you look at a lot of the other games, as far as mobile games, popular mobile games, if you were to spend the amount, even the basic spender, maybe you're on a budget, $100 a month or $50 a month or whatever the wife is okay in you to spend, or your husband, or whatever the case, your partner. If you spent that much money in a lot of these other mobile games, dude, you'd run the server.
You'd be a king. Exactly.
You'd be the guy. You'd be the one people are interviewing on those particular content creators' podcasts, because you'd be the one with all the stuff. But to play devil's advocate here, do you not think that because it requires so much time to create the content, write the coding, come up with the thing, get the licenses and so forth, do you think that paywall also kind of helps slow down that progression? Because remember what happened when people jumped straight to 39 and they were like, okay, I'm here. What are we going to do now?
Here's the difference between year 1 and year 2. If they had... So to shortly answer your question, no. I don't think that it should be as expensive as it is here today. If somebody wants to speed to level 50, then so be it. Okay? They are impacting their own experience in the game. All right? If they go straight to level 50, and if that costs even $10,000, okay? If that costs $10,000 to go to level 50, then that is what they're willing to invest, and that is what they have paid for their entertainment value. But if it actually only costs, like you say, $100 a month, and you could be a king in this game, you know, then that gives everybody the opportunity. I mean, how much could $100 be? That means that if you spend the $100, you're the king. Okay, if you don't spend the $100, you're not that far behind if you decided to grind it out. Even if it was twice as slow, it's still 10 times faster than what we have today. You see what I'm saying? Like, so and so here's the difference that I feel like a year ago when everyone sped to 39 is that there was nothing extra in the game. There was no development at all that occurred. Well, I guess you had Faction, or not Faction, Swarm. Swarm was introduced during that first year, as was Augment.
Augment, yeah.
Yeah, Augment was introduced in that first year. But those two were very early iterations of what we refer to now as Battle Pass. And those launches, those expansions were literally only 30 days apiece. If you remember when, you know, Separatist came out, for example, and that wasn't even an expansion. Like, that was just an event, and it lasted 30 days, and then it went away. Then you had Swarm, and it lasted 30 days and went away. And you had Augment, and it lasted 30 days, and it went away. None of those things were turned into hype or turned into a 3-month vessel. This year, the difference is, if I wanted to speed to level 50, that's fine, because every month I have something new to do anyway. You see? So that's, I think, the big difference. And yes, I know that there's cost. I know that the license can't be cheap. I'm sure that all that stuff costs a lot of money. But I also don't think that it costs as much money as we're spending. And again, it is a profit company. I don't believe that profit's a dirty word. I don't, okay? They can make all the money. And listen, really truthfully, and this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but they set the price tag. We're the ones paying it. You know?
Yeah.
If we don't want to pay it, then don't pay it. But the price tag is what it is because so many people do pay it. You know, I mean, it's like if you put a product out on the market and it literally doesn't sell, you're either going to pull the product, or you're going to revise the product, or you're going to cheapen the product. But if you put a product out there and it sells a gazillion copies, then Why wouldn't? Why? It
It's
ain't
not
broke.
broke. It's
Yeah.
not broke. Don't fix it. So
don't change anything.
So in this endeavor, obviously we have, you know, a lot of movement. We can ask the questions, we can say things because we're not affiliated with Scope in any way. Another big question that somebody was curious, and I've heard this thrown around a lot, especially since your show's gotten as big as it has. Are there any guidelines, or if you're allowed to talk about it, are there any guidelines that you have to follow as far as some of your content? Do they say to you, don't talk about this, you know, don't mention this, or don't do this, or don't do that?
No, it's actually, and so this is a really huge misconception, and I'm so glad that you asked it, because that is what I hear all the time. You know, oh, well, you know, all the stuff that you get and all the free stuff and, you know, you're just towing the company line and you're the company spokesperson. It's actually not like that at all. If I want to express displeasure, I 1000% can. And I do. And I have. But the difference between me and, say, you know, Joe Schmo on the official Discord is that I'm going to class it up a little bit. I mean, I am a 21-year radio professional, so I know how to speak in such a way that might say to you, hey, you know, this sucks, but I'm not going to come out and say this sucks. You know, there's, I guess, maybe a way with words, and that's just my broadcasting career that allows me to do that. But
there's a tactful way to approach it.
There's a professional way to approach that. I mean, I can have a conversation with Panic and professionally and courteously and politely, because he is a guest on my show. All right. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't remember. Okay. He is a guest. That is, I guess, something I learned very early in my career is that, listen, if somebody's taken time, whether it's their job or not, if somebody takes the time to come on your show, they are to be treated with class and respect, even if it's a debate. Okay? Like, we've totally lost that, right? Like, our freaking presidential candidates can't respect each other. Okay? But if you come on my show, you get respect. Okay? I might disagree with every word that comes out of your mouth, but I'm not going to insult you. I'm not going to disrespect you because you are my guest. That being said, there are literally no rules. There might be one or two rules which, you know, don't call us liars or cheats or thieves. You know, that I guess maybe could be a rule. But the rule is be professional.
Seems just kind of like common sense if they're going to endorse you.
The rule is be professional. Like, that's the rule.
Absolutely. That's you just pretend you're actually representing a major corporation here.
Yeah, be professional. If you have something negative to say, then so be it. Okay, absolutely, put it out there. Get us the feedback, but you can be tactful. You can be respectful and professional, and that is how I carry myself.
Another aspect of that is it kind of goes along with this question. You're talking about a lot of common misconceptions. That's something that we would like to also clear up today. That's something we like to try to do because we try to get to know the person, not just the gamer. Is a lot of people have this idea, like a lot of content creators, that you know everything that's going to come out far in advance. Is this true?
Kinda, but not really. So yes, I am given advanced knowledge. It's not, 6 months or a year in advance. It's usually, a month or two, maybe by
just
art.
real quick. I hate to cut you off, but real quick, another kind of throw this in there to also answer that question. But are you also required to keep that a secret until launch day? I'm sorry, please continue.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have non-disclosure agreements. So the company basically gives us, they can't control my opinion, but they can control the flow of information. So, for example, if they say, hey, this is a mechanic that's coming, and this is how it's going to work, the reason that they're giving us that information is so that we can prepare our videos or our content or our teaching and prepare on how to demonstrate this, right? And so that is, typically the gist of what we're given. Like, for example, I'll use this most recently, and we even talked about it on the show today. Discovery summons, okay? Yes, I've known about that. However, still to this moment, I do not know what it will cost. I don't know the prerequisites on the research. I don't know if it's going to be reputation gated or ops level gated or tier gated for the discovery. I don't know the intricate details, but I have known that summons is coming. And that allows me to to help guide people through Arc 1. For example, how many times did you guys hear, well, this ship is trash, or it has no warp range, it has no relevance to me, or even some of your VIP players saying, well, gosh, even if I wanted to develop this ship for its long-term capability, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, its long-term capability looked to be like that of a badge farmer, right? So a player might come to you and say, well, I've got 100 of each badge in my inventory. I don't even need badges. So I'm going to abandon this arc. And that's what we don't want to happen. So the information that is provided to me then is to try to, despite Scopely's best efforts, is to try to motivate people into continuing to participate, because there would be a gain. There would be a long-term benefit for this ship.
I like how you say despite Scopely's best efforts.
And see, that is a professional way for me to say that Scopely really did not do a good job.
They missed the mark.
This arc has been pretty sloppy, and a lot of people were very frustrated, especially in the first week or two of this event. So, and that's a perfect example of me criticizing with class.
What do you think? What do you think about all these other? I mean, obviously we have this other major mobile game that's just dropped, Eve Echoes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I played it for a while. The only reason I really stopped playing it was because it's not like with STFC. The beauty of this game is that you can be in the middle of pretty much anything, and hey, dinner's ready. You pop a shield, throw your phone in your pocket, put your tablet down, and you can go. But in that game, you have to be actively engaged continuously, or someone will likely blow your ass up. So it's not really a casual gaming experience as far as that's concerned. But what do you think about a lot of these other content creators? You've got Rev Deuce, you've got I think isn't Now and Shaw doing Eve?
He is.
What do you think about a lot of these guys? It seems like they're kind of making a shift to trying to create content for Eve, and no slight against them, no offense to them. Do you think maybe it's a way to kind of capture a new audience that is perceived as bigger? I mean, hell, they had 4.5 million people signed up before the game dropped.
Yeah, so I think that it personally, my opinion comes down to kind of two things. One, they were ready maybe for a change. Okay. I mean, Rev was very vocal about that, looking for an opportunity to try something new. I mean, it was no secret that he was very frustrated with this game, as a lot of players are. So when this opportunity presented itself, he had a chance to, explore that, and he did, and he is actually he's very successful over there. Like, I mean, he's doing a great job with Eve content, and I wish him all the best in the world. It is a larger audience. So for him, this is his career. Like, as a content creator, that is legit his job, So, yes, I am sure that the larger audience didn't hurt or didn't hinder his decision in any way, shape, or form. But he's also, you can see it if you watch his content. Like, he's enjoying himself, he's having fun, and that's ultimately what this is about for us, because this is not paid. Scopely does not pay. NetEase is not paying Rev. It's do your own thing, and if you can monetize it, go ahead. So if you watch somebody who's thoroughly enjoying himself, who is knowledgeable and has something to teach you, then you're more likely to consume that content repeatedly over and over again and watch new content. And that is ultimately, for example, where, YouTube comes in and actually has a very aggressive monetization schedule for players or for gamers or streamers rather, who have a large following. So yeah, the more people that's looking at your stuff, the more attractive you are to advertisers. And but do I think that was his sole motivation for going? No, not at all. I don't think his sole motivation was money. I think he was looking for something different and looking for a change, and found that with Eve. And I wish him like the absolute best of luck. He's still making still making Star Trek content for sure. But his primary, I would say, like I can see it in his videos. What he's passionate about, what he loves right now, is definitely Eve, and that's cool. It is a new game. It's something different. I also tried it out, and it wasn't exactly for me, and that's okay. That's why there's competing products, and that's why there's multiple games out there, because, hopefully at the end of the day, there's something for you.
Well, you just answered another one of the questions that somebody posted. It was Slaughterer. also from Server 34. He that was one of his questions. Do you do Eve echoes? And if you did, how did you manage both? And if not, why did you drop it? And you just kind of answered that.
Well, it wasn't really for me. Yes, I downloaded it. I tried it out. As a matter of fact, I have an NDA with NetEase. I am an official content creator for Eve. I haven't produced a video for Eve in a month and a half. So I think I did 2 or 3 pieces of content for them like early on at the launch, but I struggled to really get into the game. I think part of that was that I love a Star Trek property, so it wasn't Star Trek, so I was naturally lesser interested in it. But for the same thing that you had kind of mentioned too, my job, my real day job, does require me to, at the drop of a hat, take care of a client. And I mean, that could literally be a 2-second window. Somebody comes into my office, hey, yes, please come in and have a seat. It doesn't matter what I'm doing in a game. It doesn't matter if I'm raiding a base or if I'm completing an anomaly or if I'm trying to, get through a Stargate. And I lost a multitude of ships because I would just turn my attention away. And I'd come back and wouldn't even be killed by players. I'd be killed by NPCs because I was in the middle of an anomaly and I came back and I'm in a pod. So that to me was a little bit challenging. And then when I set it down for good was this most recent change with the, being sniped at gates. And I'm like, if I literally can't even, set a 20-minute warp and come back in 20 minutes, then I'm out because I don't have that kind of screen time to dedicate to a game. So that was...
Yeah, you almost have to have either no life or no job.
Well, you have to watch it. I mean, if you're going to be on for an hour, here's one thing in this game, in Star Trek. If I have a 15-minute warp, cool. I can come back in 15 minutes, and I could do that in Eve until like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now I can't do that. So, I mean, and warp times are worse in Eve than they are in Star Trek. So if I'm going to set something that's 23 jumps away, and then I got to sit there and stare at it for 23 jumps, like that's not fun.
No,
that's not fun for me.
My last question, you kind of touched on it a little bit. With a lot of people are wanting to know this. You don't get paid anything from Scopely. You don't. Mm-hmm. They give you no money. You don't get a check. They don't mail you. Okay. Do you get any sort of benefits, in-game currency?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I do. So, and funny enough that you asked this because a lot of people do, and this is ironically one thing that Scopely doesn't like us talking about, although we're not forbidden to talk about it. But I think it's with responsibility. I think it's responsible the way that they handle it. I know that players think that it's inequitable. Players think that because I'm 39 and I have a 3.3 million enterprise, that must have been a freebie. I assure you, my credit card bill disagrees. But yes, they do provide things, but it's always relevant to what they want us teaching or promoting. So, for example, I go back. I joined the official content creators program in January. Okay. So, at that point, we had no arcs. We had nothing going on. So up until that point, I'd got nothing other than what I had given away on the show. Of course, I had the giveaways, but that didn't come into my account. That was going into your all's accounts. So,
right.
With the first seasonal arc, which I think started middle of January, that was Borg, right? And at that time, believe it or not, even the technology with Scopely has changed this year. At that time, they did not even have a way to grant officers. So 1 of 10 came out, and then of course 7 of 10, 8 of 10, 9 of 10, these other officers came out. They didn't even have a way to grant officers at that time, so we got none of that. What I got during Borg was a free set Vidar blueprints, and I got that early so that I could teach on it. The idea was that we would get it, and we would do some testing at each tier to kind of give you guys some insight as to what you should be hitting and what is capable of what, and so forth and so on. So they also handed out some charged nanoprobes, and it was enough for us to get the ship to tier 5. All right, but the idea was, hey, do some research. All right, so take it out of tier 1, take it out of tier 2, try to hit this at tier 3, and document it and share. So that is what I got. That is what I got for the entire Borg arc. All 3 months, I got a set of Vidar BPs and 50,000 charged probes.
So basically,
that's what I got.
So, in other words, the takeaway from our audience members should be that they're not giving you stuff so you can level up and bully people on the server. They're giving you the
You
things so
got it.
that
Now,
you
in
only so
fairness,
that you can test.
in fairness, it wasn't always that way. Like, I mean, there were content creators that came before me, okay? And that's why I say the product or the program, rather, has changed, because in the early days of the program, it was pretty carte blanche. I mean, Rev has been very open about what he's received from Scopely, as has
Yeah.
no one. They're on video. You guys can see them with thousands of uncommons or thousands of rares. And so that stuff, I'm sorry for my dogs. They see a deer. But yeah, that kind of stuff was on screen. And so you could see it. And in the very beginning, the program was a little bit more free range, you know? I believe that both the Enterprise and the Augur that Rev flies in were both provided, you know? So that was a different time. Coming into January, which happened to be right as I was joining the program, Panic said, hey, listen, we've got some major changes coming down from the top. You know, we've got these concerns of equity and so forth, which were valid concerns. So at that point, like, it was literally changed to, like, you will not receive anything unless it is pre-approved, unless we know what content you're going to be doing with it, or unless, you know, it's something that we want to give you because we want you to teach about it or promote it. And so, for example, you know, that's where the Vidar came in. That was the first grant I ever got. Then Stella came. The Stella arcs came out. And in that span of 3 or 4 months, Scopely had developed the opportunity, or developed the tech to be able to actually deposit an officer. So during the Stella arcs, we got a set of Stella BPs. I'm trying to remember what we got. You know what it was? So they gave us, Stella was a little bit different because that was a scrappable ship, right?
Right.
So they gave us enough materials, like exact number, okay, like down to the single, you know, uranium. They gave us enough to get it all the way to tier 9 to demonstrate, teach. They gave us 72 hours. 72 hours to do all the content that we were going to do. And then we had to turn in proof of scrap. So, like, they would check our account and see if we had scrapped the ship. They gave us 72 hours and gave us everything we needed to get it to tier 9. And then we had to scrap it. So what did we actually walk away with? If you remember, in the beginning, it was only 30,000 stellar particles. Now, today, a tier 9 scrap's 470,000. But on day 1, it wasn't. So what did we actually walk away with? Absolutely nothing, except for 30,000 stellar particles. We didn't even get to keep the ship, you know, because we had
the
to scrap
ship,
it.
right? I was about to say.
Yeah, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about it, I mean, that ship is so specialized. I mean, you're not going to use it for anything else but pertaining to the Rogue Store. I mean, it's trash for PvP. I mean, it is. I mean, I've tested it. I've gotten mine up to, I think mine's tier 6 now, and just even like, I've tested it with other people. Say, hey, do you have like an old ship laying around? Yeah, I got this stupid hijack ship that I built. Hey, let's PvP, and I might as well have been PvPing in the botany.
Now, where's your research at? Because I have actually heard a little different. Now, this obviously comes at much later research. We're talking 80 and 90 and 100 level research. That little Stella can, I mean, I've seen screenshots of it taking out Intrepids and Burrells, and I've seen one, but I haven't checked his M level research, but I know it's really high. It's over 100. But I've got a 1.7 baby Enterprise being taken out by a Stella. So, no, it's crappy crew. Crappy crew, okay? But at the higher levels, I mean, this is such a long play ship. It definitely has some capabilities, but your research has got to be like in the last third. Like, you got to be in that 90 to 100 range on your M-level research. But yeah,
I think what it's used for right now is for anybody who's a mid-range player. It's great for base defense because I think it does the 12-6, 12-6 firing pattern as a base defender, and then it does the 12-6, 12-6 on the armadas. That's about it. Or mid-range player.
And not only that, but I mean, you look at a lot of the M-level research that you're doing with that ship, and a lot of it is based around mitigation and extra attack, and I mean, those things are pretty big because that's per shot. You know, so I mean, if you get, like, say, for example, kinetic guerrilla warfare up to, you know, level 4, level 5, where it's shooting an extra 20,000 damage every shot, and then you do that 8 times, you know, or 16 times, I mean, that's pretty significant. So the Stella definitely has some long-term play, but yeah, in that arc, We got tier 1 of the officers. We got a stellar hull scan and 30,000 particles out of it, just as a result of us having to scrap it. This arc, I did, in fact, receive a set of blueprints to Discovery, although it was too late. I got the Discovery from Scopely after I already had my own, after everyone else already had theirs. So there was a timing issue this month. And they gave us, I want to say 3,500 or 4,000 spore drive components. It was nothing. It was enough to get the ship to tier 3. So we were able to get the ship to tier 3 just so we could demonstrate some early capabilities. And then, again, we got a tier 1 unlock of the new officers. So, and that allows us to do testing. We can take a look at Saru, we can take a look at Burnham, and we can, determine, for example, that Saru is, I don't want to say broken, but definitely not working as intended. And that gives us an opportunity to provide that early feedback as well.
Tech, you go ahead. I have one last question. I'll wait till the end.
All right. Well,
see why it's easy to do 2 hours? Because, I'm very wordy.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, the beauty.
It's also more interesting to talk to the person behind the screen name as opposed to talk about a screen name in the text chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing is, how often do you get to actually sit and have these conversations on your show?
Yeah, to be honest with you, not very often. I do, and not certainly in this context. If I have conversations about grants, for example, then it's usually in self-defense. It's usually somebody accusing me of cheating or being a bully or this or that. Literally just tonight, I was accused of being a cheater because my Discovery with Pan as captain and full synergy was outrunning his Sally. But I'm the cheater because his ship isn't capable of catching me. And I mean, this is a player who should know better, right? This is a player who's like Ops 35 or 36, who's known me. I've known this player. We've played together for 2 years on the same server. He's been there almost as long as I have. And, calling me a cheater because he can't kill my ship. I mean, come on, better. So the conversations that I have about grants are typically, unfortunately, in self-defense. Because if I offer a suggestion or an idea that people don't like, then I'm automatically a shill. I'm automatically in Scopely's pockets. I'm automatically towing the company line. And I, people who know me or listen to me know that that's not true. I am allowed to have an opinion just like anybody else, but a lot of times that's misinterpreted.
Oh, haters are going to hate. Heck, we got a guy on our server that has accused me of receiving things from Scopely, and that's why I have a 2.4 million auger.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, that was an expensive auger, but that is not, that's not 50,000 free ore, for example.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
It's some of the stuff these guys come out with is.
I mean, if you were going to
ridiculous.
get stuff from Scopely to get a ship, would it be a 2.4 or would it be a 4.0? Right? I mean, if if that's what you're going to do.
So, real quick, we do have a couple special guests here. First, I want to ask Handyman. Handyman, do you have any questions? You've been sitting here listening in.
No, I mean, you guys covered it really well. I really, really enjoyed this show, though.
He's not level 50, so he can't ask any questions.
Speaking of level 50, we also have Scarporin level 50. You've been listening in. What say you? Do you have any questions?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Were you guys doing an interview?
Issue your judgment, Scott. Come on now. I need to hear your approval.
Listen, bro. I like your podcast, but you're no level 50, bro.
That is true. That is true. I'm trying. I am on my way, sir. I will be with you in at least no more than another 40 months. I'll be right there. I'm on my way.
But I love you, bro. You know that.
I love you too. Thank you, Scarporin, level 50. I love your ship and your sunglasses.
The last thing is that this is another question from Maza from our server. He wants to know if there's a message that you could share with the community. Maybe you don't get much of an opportunity to do it on your show, but if there's a message that you could share with your with the community personally, what would that be?
That would vary. I mean, it's not even something I have to think about, guys. It's a game. It is a video game. We are nerds for playing it, but it is a game meant for entertainment, meant for enjoyment, and meant for fun. The minute that it turns into less than that, the minute that it de-escalates into hate mail or racist or homophobic or hate speech, when that happens, like it is time to put it down. It is time to put it away. It's a game. So, think before you type. When you are speaking to somebody, listen, you might get frustrated. Yes, you might get rated. That might suck. But again, this is a game. You lost nothing. Okay? You are still whole. You are still a person. You still have your life. You're still breathing oxygen. And you please remember who is on the other side of the keyboard, all right? Because it is most likely someone just like you who bleeds red and has two eyeballs and maybe has children and has a life and breathes oxygen and has a beating heart just like you. We are all human. It is a game, and it should never, ever de-escalate into some of the stuff that I see. It breaks my heart sometimes to see stuff that I see. It should never get to that point. And if you feel like you're approaching that point, unplug. I even said that here just a couple of weeks ago on the show. Like, even myself, I will get there once in a while, and I unplug for a day or two. I shut off Discord, I throw up a 3-day shield, and I go do something else, and then I come back.
Once your blood pressure starts going up, it's time for you to put it down.
You need to take a break. So, yeah, that's not even something for me to think. I mean, if I'm sending a message to the community, it's hey, have fun. All right? I mean, war can be fun. PvP can be fun. Rating and being rated can be fun. I mean, this is entertainment, and when it stops being that for you, put it down. Go away.
We've talked about it several times, and especially in these trying times, people are seeking out their camaraderie, their social, forums through this game. So they're starting a lot more people are starting to pour their real life emotions into it, because this is now their outlet. A lot of places, now it's getting a little more lax, but the past few months, you couldn't go out and have a beer with your friends. You couldn't go to the bar. You couldn't go out to eat. You had to stay at home. So people were getting way more involved. So I am glad you say that. Tech?
No, I think that was a perfect way to wrap it up. So, DJs, hey, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. I know we ran a little over what we normally do, but
it
you're always
happens,
fun to
man.
talk to.
I talk a lot, so yeah. But hey, I really want to thank you guys for having me on. I love the work you do, and I really enjoy the podcast. So thank you guys for inviting me. It's been a ton of fun, and happy to come by anytime.
Absolutely, great. I'm sure we'll get to a point where we can get a bunch of random people together and just start talking nerdy Star Trek.
Yes, I'd love it.
All right, so I want to thank Handy for joining us, Scarporin Level 50, Raptor's been listening in, and everybody else out there who's asked some questions. Tune in next time. Remember to, if you got any questions, UltimatDJz is always available. He runs a podcast twice a week on the Server 15 Talking Trek Live podcast with UltimatDJz. He's always available for a chat, for help. You can always ask anybody else. His producer Snake Eyes and anybody else on the Discord server. Feel free to join and enjoy it. And don't take the game too seriously. This has been Trek Talk with Tech and Kirk. I'm TechMan16.
And I'm not level 50.
And we're all not level 50 except for Scarporin.
Level 50.
See you guys next time.